Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Chris Jennings.
Joining me today in studio, which is exciting, is Jeff Jones, the Chief Product Officer for Chêne Gear. Jeff, welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I am super excited to have Jeff in here, and Jeff and I have worked together for several years, so we're very familiar with each other. But I'm really excited because Jeff actually brought a pair of Chêne Gear waders in, and I know that our listeners out there, all the gearheads, the waterfowlers who, really focus on gear, everybody was aware of the launch of Chêne Gear this year. We ran it in New Guns and Gear in July, August. But I'm excited to have a pair in hand, which we'll be sharing some photos and some videos of that here shortly. But I want to get Jeff on here to really talk about Chêne Gear, the brand, how it was born, and then we'll really get into the products that they have. So, Jeff, let's start with that. First of all, let's start with the name. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but I know me personally, I do all the products for Ducks Unlimited magazine, so I should be tuned in. And I know when the brand originally started leaking out that it was launching, I was guilty of saying, hey, that Chêne Gear, So let's start with the name. How did that come about? And then let's just how the brand was born.
All right. So Chêne, what it means is French for oak. It's an oak tree, and that's the French word for oak, and it has that cool little diacritic above it that we were able to kind of take and turn into like the Delta logo that kind of represents where we're all from and where we hunt and where we love to be. So it is Chêne, but man, you hear it everywhere. Sheeny, Chêne. We were actually talking about one time recording a bunch of people saying it how they see it.
Yeah.
How do you say it? And, it's great. Anywhere from delivery drivers that come to the office to people that just call in to my kids friend, everybody pronounces it different.
So, and it is Chêne. And I know when I talked to you just before they launched and you mentioned, you made a good kind of a comparison, like standing in water up to your shins.
Yeah. Shin deep water.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And so how did the whole brand come about?
So it was an idea to do something. Everybody said, I want to do something different. But honestly, we did. We wanted to do something different, approach it different, and honestly, singularly focus on duck hunting. Mm-hmm. And inside of duck hunting, it's that tradition-rich, flooded green timber duck hunting.
Yeah.
That's where I've been doing this for a little over 20 years, and everybody I talk to all over the world, all over the U.S., they want to talk about hunting in the timber. They may not have ever been there, but they've seen it. They see pictures in DU's magazine. Oh, yeah. They see video of it. Everybody dreams and aspires about the timber. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've been since birth, just a lifelong public land timber hunter.
Yeah.
So I love it.
And you're pretty lucky in that sense, just for the fact that, I grew up in Indiana, reading DU magazine and watching all the TV shows of guys who were in flooded timber, and I had no concept of actually what flooded. Now, our rivers would get out every once in a while, but it's not the same as the true green timber that's down here in the South for sure.
Yeah, no, there was green timber behind my parents' house that we could get to and we could hunt. There was public land green timber within just a few minutes of home, and it's not just me; it's my whole family. It's cousins and uncles, and we've just been consumed by it forever.
So where are your secret public land timber spots?
You might start dropping pins, but no, I am a lifer in the White River Refuge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it. That's home to me, and it's a different timber hunt than like even a WMA. Mm-hmm. WMA that's maybe not off of a river. The White River, man, it's just special.
It is.
The woods are old. They're different. The water's different, and the way the ducks behave and the way you work them.
Yeah.
I always tell everybody, you might start out with 4, and then next thing that's grown to 6, and now it's 10. It just builds up there in the sky, those groups of ducks, and man, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, last time I hunted down there, it was a little bit snaky. I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago when the rivers, we launched off a county road, you know, and it had warmed up. So it was high water and warm. And it was like, oh no, there's, you know, the water pushes the snakes out. The warmth allows them to get fired up. And it was a snaky. We shot some ducks, but it was pretty snaky down there.
Yeah, that happens a bunch, especially when you're coming out on those logging trails or some of the old bayous. You'll have a tree down and, you know, you'll just be motoring along and there's a limb at like eye level and there's a cottonmouth sunning himself on it. And you're like, okay, I'll be ease on by,
to Arkansas. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's get back to the Chêne gear because we could probably just talk White River all day long. But, you know, you mentioned the brand was built based on that tradition of green timber hunting. And, you know, that's awesome. But what, you know, I guess my question is, you know, how did someone just be like, hey man, let's start Chêne gear? You know, how did the whole process start?
Right. So, you know, kind of my history, I've been doing making products for waterfowl hunters for years. And I kind of felt like there was a possibility for someone to just come in and focus strictly on like waders. Yeah. Let's come in and build a wader company. Let's do a wader out of some materials that are different than what other people are doing. And how can we make it better? How can we make it different? And, you know, face that problem of how do you make a wader that doesn't leak?
Yeah.
That's the end goal. And the thought was, well, the problem was, here's the things that restrict you from doing what you'd want to do. And let's skip those restrictions. Mm-hmm. Let's just say we could do it however absolutely you want to do it, put the best ingredients into it, what would happen then? And that's really the thought behind the brand and behind the product. And that was the thought kind of behind the product. And we just carried that over to the brand. Well, what could we do in customer service to make somebody's experience better?
Yeah.
Can we, if there is a problem with the product, could we fix it? Could we fix it within a short window of time and get it back to them? Mm-hmm. You know, the question was, could we fix it in an hour?
Yeah.
Or could we fix it in a day? And, you know, so it was always, how can we make something better than what is out there or a better experience for the customer?
Yeah. And when you said, you know, you take away all of the, well, we can't do this because of this. When you take away all of that, we can't do. What was the foundation of the materials that you guys were starting with? Like, all right, we're going to go the best that we can possibly get. And, you know, knowing your background in all of these fabrics and materials, what was that material that you're like, let's start here. Let's look at this.
Well, I mean, honestly, it was, like you said, there's better materials out there. So, like, we chose to use nylon. Mm-hmm. The face fabric, I have to kind of keep it simple or super techy.
Yeah.
And it's weird because when a consumer looks at the wader and touches it, they feel a fabric.
Yep.
And they think this is a fabric. Well, that fabric is made up of 4 layers.
Okay.
So I try to break it down. When you walk up and you feel the outside of that wader, that's nylon fabric. That's layer number 1 going outside in. Nylon is a way more dense, way more, the construction of it is just better. It will hold abrasion. It won't tear as easy. It's very tough and very durable.
Yep.
But the negatives to it were you couldn't print it in traditional camouflage printing ways, meaning the way a polyester wader is made, it's printed with heat transfer paper where the camo has the heat transfer paper on it, and you kind of melt that onto the polyester. Well, you couldn't do that with nylon. Okay, so how can you print it? Well, you can print it in a digital way of printing it, but people would say you don't want a digital print because it's 5 times as expensive as paper print.
Yeah.
If we did it, how much would it be?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it was kind of just breaking down those traditional barriers of it would cost you too much to do it this way. You can't use this fabric because it won't react this way. And it was just everybody that builds a business or goes into the industry, they always say, well, you just ask the question of why. Why? And we just kind of kept asking the question, well, why not?
Yeah.
Why can't you do that? Or why can't you do this? And it was really just boiling everything that somebody said you can't do out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you say I can't do it because the printing method to do this is too expensive, what would it cost me to do it?
Yeah.
And honestly, it was just getting it to a way that we could build the product better than what we felt was out there.
When you started, you kind of mentioned the nylon outer shell there. Did you start with that nylon outer shell, or did you say, let's start with the boot? Like how did you guys approach that?
It was kind of a shotgun thing. When we looked at fabric, we said what's available and what's better than what's available, and kind of worked it all the way up through. I mean, we made some out of some really good polyester fabric. I mean, it was high waterproof, high breathable, really strong, but it just wasn't as good as nylon. So it was like build it out and then try to go better and go better and go better. So we did that with the fabric. And then at the same time that we're doing that with the fabric, we were doing it with the boot too. Yep. So it was like, let's build a boot from the outsole, which is what touches the floor, touches the ground, all the way up. And we kind of knew that if you look at athletic shoes like tennis shoes, or especially like the on-cloud shoes, or even a Croc, for instance, that those things have EVA in the sole. So the question was, well, let's just build a sole out of all EVA because it's so comfortable and it rebounds when you step, and it's light and it's all this.
So you started with Crocs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
It was the idea of Crocs and the idea of the on-cloud shoes. And it was like, okay, why couldn't you build a boot out of this? Well, they would come back and say, well, you could, but there's no slip resistance. You're going to fall in the mud and you're going to do this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, how about we put a little bit of rubber on the very bottom of it and EVA for comfort, and then build a boot around that. And again, it was like, well, you can do that. You could try it. Yeah. So, and it was really, I kept telling everybody, manufacturing on, it was just breaking down the barriers of, well, why not? Let's just try it. Let's try something different and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that's a cool process to kind of explain and to hear, and we'll get more into that. But I think, consumers in general, waterfowlers, just like everyone else, don't really think about these processes necessarily. It's like this is like you said, this can get super techie. Like we always joke around. I joke with Dr. Mike Brazier, my co-host, all the time, that he's just like, he'll go duck nerd on us and totally like black out and say things that no one really understands because he's there's so much knowledge behind what he's talking about. Some people can miss it. And I think that's the same thing with waders, and especially it sounds like with the shin gear waders, it can get really in the weeds and really into the technical side, which is cool. I mean, I'm into that,
Yeah, when you get into the fabric and the layers and what makes up and what makes it breathable and what makes it waterproof.
That was going to be my next question.
It can get so far out there that you're like, wheel it back.
Oh, yeah. Well, and this is an important question too, and this is just me having experience, having waders fail all the time myself. The seams on the back here where the boots attach to the material, how did you guys approach that?
So again, it was just kind of a different way to do it. So the seams all throughout the legs, that is really one of the very first places that waders fail. You get rubbing in the legs when you're walking or when you're straddling a four-wheeler or when you're getting on a boat. Anything that you do duck hunting was causing pressure on the seams. So it was really going in and taking a look at where the seams impacted on the legs and kind of moving them. So we moved certain parts of seams so they're not rubbing, they're not touching. And then it was a different process of actually building it. So if you look at traditional waders and really anything that's sewn together, you're taking a waterproof fabric and then you're punching 11 holes every inch to sew it. And then you come on with this tape on the back end to protect against the holes that you just punched in it to sew it. So it's one of those things where you said, all right, is there not any other way that you could do this?
Yeah.
Could you make it without sewing? There's some really cool stuff out there in the t-shirt world and in the sock world where it never touches a needle. It's just knitted. So, there's that idea and thought, well, you couldn't make a leg that wasn't connected. So, all right, so you
have to find a way to connect it.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah. So what's the next way to do it? What's the other ways to connect it? And we came across a way that you could almost, for the easiest way to understand, it's just welded. There's a way to weld the seams together or melt the seams together, and this is a mechanical bonding, and you could do that with nylon. So that kind of was like, you couldn't do it with polyester because polyester wouldn't hold up to it, but nylon would. So I was like, oh, well, that's a different way of doing
What's
it.
that? How hot does that have to get to melt that without? Is there like a very fine line?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
So, and that's
You don't have
part
to
of
give
too.
away the secrets here.
Well, I mean, that is in the sauce.
Yeah.
It's getting that temperature right. And it's not only getting it right, because the way the machine works, you have to get the pressure between the two wheels right too.
Yeah.
Because it can cut.
Oh yeah.
You have to get the speed that you do it through the machine right also. And all of that was a learning challenge.
Yeah.
Now, we had some really good manufacturing partners that understood it and had some patents on how they did it, and they kind of built their own machinery to do it, and they really had figured that way out.
And you mentioned you originally started out with like a polyester fabric. How many different variations did you guys go through before you're like, that's it?
I got a garage full.
I was going to say, where are all these? Can I get some kickback?
They
gear waders?
I have a garage full, and really, we're when we get kind of like everybody else, once we can get our facility completely set up, the office set up, I'm going to do a history of wader.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
not only ours, but I told a lot of people too in some other podcasts, they've been making waders since like the 1800s.
Yeah, I'm sure you've been to the Bass Pro Pyramid here in Memphis, where we've got that old pair of waders in there. Like,
I mean, in any time. So I have this book. It's like the history of waders from like 1830.
Wow.
And it's mesmerizing because anytime a person like me that does products or builds things, anytime you think you've got a new idea that's never been thought of, they did it 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Or they did it 75 years ago. So,
well, I don't want to date myself here, but I know my first pair of waders, a buddy of mine that I hunted with him and his dad had a bunch of old waders. He gave 2 or 3 of us a pair, and we were like 14, 15 years old. It was those old, just olive green, like, it was almost like a raincoat, but it was a real thick, like PVC.
That's exactly what it
material that were terrible. I mean, and they were so big. I mean, it was like a 55-gallon drum. Now, we weren't very big at the time, but I mean, those are the way, and no insulation.
Nope.
And we weren't hunting in the South, and we were hunting up north, and it was cold. I mean, and then sitting here looking at these waders, like, oh my gosh, the game has changed.
Oh yeah, it's completely different. But the original idea of a lot of the stuff that they were doing back then is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
It's just we've had so many more technical advances in the fabrics and in the laminates that make them waterproof. Because the ones that you're talking about, I guarantee you were like the Converse rubber.
Yeah.
And then it had either a nylon or a canvas on the outside so they could give it color.
Yeah. We had some pair that would have almost like a Cordura, but it was a canvas. That's right. It was a canvas that they could put whatever camo was on there.
That's the only reason why, to do that and to protect the rubber from the sun exposure and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that's really it. It's just the overall idea of the wader has not changed since day one. It's how do I stay dry when I go out in water? But it's the materials and the craftsmanship and the technological advances that are changing.
Yeah. And one thing, we'll go ahead and move through the wader a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm, kind of get into the technical side of it because I'm into that. But the one thing that really sticks out, obviously everyone looks at it and sees it, it's the zipper.
Yeah.
And so how did you approach that? How do you put a zipper on a wader that won't leak, that, is guaranteed not to fail?
So that's where you kind of come in and you partner up with somebody that does that. And look, I'll tell anybody, I'll say it multiple times, I'm not wearing a white lab coat.
Yeah.
I didn't come from NASA.
Yeah.
I'm just a duck hunter. And I've spent my time focusing on and answering or asking that question of why not. Yeah. So I'm no genius here. But the people at YKK are when it comes to zippers.
Oh, yeah.
They know what they're doing. And they make an aqua seal zipper that doesn't leak. They use them on all kinds of things. And actually, it cost us a lot of delays in getting our zippers for our waders because of the PPE equipment and different stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So these people, they know zippers. I don't know zippers. I don't really need to know zippers.
Take it to the zipper guys.
I need to go to the zipper people and say, hey, what's the best thing out there? And it's that zipper. We're not the only one that use that zipper. There's other people that use that zipper. But that's where you go to YKK and say, hey, I need the best zipper possible because I'm going to put people in a wader that they're going to go in water in.
Yeah. And that's similar to the same wader that they would put on like wetsuits, is it not?
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Just to kind of give people an idea. Straps.
So straps, that's where we, being a user of the product kind of comes in. a lot of waders have a bunch of like big, long elastic, and they get stretched out, and it's, it's just not the best way to do it. What we did was went in with a heavy duty webbing shoulder strap, so you could kind of lock that wader down onto your body and it fits snug and hold tight to you and stay in place.
Yeah.
Now that's always a back-breaking thing when they won't stay in place. But doing that to build the straps that way, it was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, all right, this is the best way to build a strap that we can come up with. Now, how do we make it comfortable?
Yeah.
So then we came in, we built this underneath the strap neoprene padded yoke system. So it spreads that weight around your back and your shoulders and gets it off of you.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where wearing it and having a bunch of people wear it kind of comes back, and you can build things like that.
Yeah, kind of talk about the buckle on the straps. I mean, that's a little bit of a different look than some of your traditional waders. Why did you guys choose that?
So if you watch duck hunters and people that love to shoot and that wear waders and everything, those buckles get in the way.
Yep.
They're right in the shoulder. They're right where you raise your gun up, or sometimes even right where you put your gun against you. So a buckle, especially like a plastic buckle, it's a pain and it's in the way. And a lot of times you'll take waders off and they get stepped on and it's broken, and now you've got pretty much a useless wader because you can't work the straps.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a way to try to find it so you could, a different buckle so you could slim down that whole chest area. You didn't have a big piece of plastic sticking there. So we have this little slide buckle that you can adjust it. You can get in and out of it pretty quick, or you can leave it set. If you're very comfortable and can move real easy, you can just slide the shoulder straps off and get out of your waders. Yep. A lot of people will set them one time and never touch it again.
Yeah, I do it like that. I always tell people that I need to be in the wader Olympics because I can get my waders on and off faster than anyone else. Getting out of the
I'm ready.
Yeah. And that's because I leave my straps and then just pull them down, pull them up. There's no unbuckling or nothing, it's just like hop in and go.
Yeah. And that shoulder strap system with that zipper, it allows you to do that so easy. You can just set them and just slide them on, slide them off, and it's easy to go.
So how many waders did you guys have out in the field last season? I mean, I know you didn't launch this product until July, but I mean, you guys obviously had people out there testing these things.
Yeah, so we made waders and we wore them and tested them, and then we put them on, I think it was right at 50 or right over 50, right around the 50 number, 52 or 48 people that wore waders. And it was people that
everyday type.
Yeah, I mean, just those lucky people, man. There's some people
get to hunt every day.
That can hunt every day or 40 days or whatever it is. And it was people like that you're kind of jealous of.
I used to hunt like 45 days before I started working for Ducks Unlimited. Now I'm in the office more. I get to hunt. I'm not saying I don't get my opportunities, but I definitely, I know the people you're talking about who get to spend almost every day out there, and that's awesome.
So it was good. It was good to get their feedback. They helped on the shoulder straps, the boots, the belt.
And did you choose people like, I think it probably a really good perspective for you, who's kind of the engineer behind all of it here. You hunt from a boat. From my opinion, boat hunting is the hardest on waders. Some people would say no, this kind of, but man, getting in and out of the boat, there's things in the boat that can catch it. It's a disaster for waders, in my opinion. Now you obviously were in the boat, but did you look at it and be like, hey, I need a guy that hunts nothing but rice fields or nothing but flooded cornfields? Did you kind of look at it from that perspective?
We did. Our primary focus is the woods and the timber. That's who we are and who we're going after. But we also did exactly that. We had to look at people that hunted from big stationary blinds, people that were hunting out of pits.
Pits are a disaster.
Cornfields, there's a lot of people that are hunting now in like layout type blinds in cornfields. So you kind of wanted their opinion of how was it when you have to stand in knee deep water, but then lay down in a kind of a layout boat type thing in a cornfield. So what were they experiencing when they wore the wader? And it was just getting that feedback. Yeah. And honestly, it's still getting feedback from customers now.
Yeah.
We kind of encourage anybody to come along and say, I like this or I don't like that, or because we're duck hunters too. We just want to build product for duck hunters.
Yeah. So you want that feedback.
You do.
So some people don't. They're like, this is perfect.
Well, I mean, just like anything else, you get some crazy feedback.
Oh, yeah.
You know what you need? Your belt.
It
needs to be able to hold a beverage in there.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not real,
Yeah.
So, but, you kind of weed through people's suggestions and ideas, and you never know what little thing somebody just randomly says would make something better. So, yeah, we welcome it.
Yeah, and so I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. If anyone, who has shin gear waders now has feedback, you can email the DU Podcast at dupodcast@ducks.org, and we will forward that over to Jeff. So any listeners out there who want to provide feedback or just have questions, and we'll provide that in the show notes of the episode as well. But by all means, like he's welcoming feedback. Now don't recommend the belt cup holder for the we don't need to recommend that. But moving on, we'll kind of, as much as I like to get into the technical side of the build, we may come back to that because I got one more question. But I wanted to talk to you about the launch, how you built up. You guys spent 2 years basically building the product, or more. Was it about 2 years?
About 2 years.
About 2 years. You get the products, the rumblings. I started hearing I'm doing the new guns and gear. So I knew, you and I had spoke, and we need that product well before, July when you guys were going to launch. So I was kind of on the front edge of kind of hearing the hints and seeing the products. But your launch date was July 15th, and you guys just basically went live direct to consumer on your website. How was that process?
It was amazing. The whole idea of direct to consumer and everything's different than what you see before. We chose that July timeframe because historically, whether waterfowlers admit it or not, or even think about it, around that July 4th timeframe, it's like a switch happens in waterfowlers' heads, and they start thinking about the season. They start preparing their places and all that.
That's why the new guns and gear feature
right.
in DU Magazine is July, August, and it's the most popular piece of content that we put out all year long, and it's every year.
Yeah. So it was like the perfect time to release and come out. So we had this release. I mean, it was like, okay, at 10 o'clock.
So you planned this around DU Magazine?
Yeah, we did. That's exactly what we did. So no, we said around 10 o'clock, we're going to turn the switch on and people can order. And man, it was really awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was. You could tell that not only did consumers want a new product, but they were also looking for a new brand and somebody that kind of listened to them and came out and said, hey, we're trying to solve problems and this is what we're focusing on and all that. And being there all day watching, orders come in or questions come in or just seeing traffic on the website as it moved. It was a really surreal experience.
Yeah. How many pairs of waders did you sell that first day? Is that a public knowledge?
Yeah, I can't remember. I wish I probably should have done better homework.
No,
I've been
I was just curious.
And
I'll be honest, we were probably part of your potential technical problem on that day because I know John Hoffman sits next to our photo editor, and I walked in his office and he's like, they're going live, and pulled up the website right there. And so like there were people who were just, probably a lot of people who were kind of looking.
Oh yeah, there was tons of people looking, and we were like, and it's one of those questions too, when you're working. So I'm not a technical guy. I don't know anything at all about computers or the web or anything. I was like, what do we do if we crash? And like, well, I don't think we will, but we won't know until we launch.
Yeah.
So we won't. It was like an answer of, well, we won't crash until we crash.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
you'll be the first at the scene of the crime.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Man, it really was. It was such a cool experience.
That's cool. And did you guys get feedback that first day from people like, oh man, like, or maybe like a week later when they got it, shipped to their house and they open it up and they're like, oh, dude.
Yeah. So we took a little bit of time to get orders in, get everything kind of, because it was, it sounds simple. You place an order, you ship a wader, but we wanted to take time with who the customer was that bought the wader. So we wrote handwritten thank you notes to anybody that bought a wader. We sent it out. So it took us a little bit of time to get all the orders sorted, find out who the customers were, and be able to write a note to them. Thanking them. Cool. It's a big deal. Everybody's family's kind of riding on this, and you wanted to say thanks. If a guy took the time to buy the product, we wanted to say thank you to him. So we started shipping and getting waders out there, and then it was just kind of like automatic responses of, we love this wader. These waders fit great. And for people that have never felt nylon or never felt this kind of wader, it feels completely different than any other breathable out there. So you would get these comments about the feel of the fabric and how tough and durable they were. And then the races started.
Uh-oh.
People started posting on Instagram and different things running in this wader.
Really?
And I had no
That's
idea
hilarious.
where it came
Yeah.
from, who started it or anything. But we got one, and a guy posted it on Instagram, and we shared it on our story, and he's just like running zigzags in his backyard. And then the next thing you know,
the internet is awesome.
the next thing you know, there's a guy running around his shop, and he runs all the way up to the camera. And it was just continued videos. There's a guy that did a video. He's on a treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy was in a gym. And you're like, I don't know why this is happening, but it's so fun to watch.
Oh yeah, and that's true. I mean, it's just quite the testament to the mobility, and that's one thing that for me, even growing up with those old waders that we knew like walking long distances was a disaster, and that's completely changing. I mean, and that's just the technological advances of these things. Well, so that's awesome though.
It's one of the things that was really addressed with this wader, and for a purely selfish reason.
Mm-hmm.
So when the water level is not up, the White River is so weird. The water can come up, it can go down. Beavers can trap it. So there's a lot of my season that I can only boat so far, and then I got to walk.
Oh yeah,
and that's not fun. I mean,
you don't have one of those big barges where you can take your four-wheeler
We
across?
do. So we can do that too.
Yeah.
But again,
it's dependent on the river level.
If the river hits a certain level, there's sloughs you can't cross.
Yeah.
So you get times that you're trapped to, if you want to get to a spot, you're going to have to walk.
Yeah.
So you wanted a wader that took away that heavy boot and that
The clunkiness of
uncumbersome.
it.
Yeah. So there was a lot of thought put behind that into this wader.
Yeah, no, I mean it's exciting, and that's what I wanted. Just based on that, even going back to the technical side of it, and you brought it up briefly, but this is just me being curious. How do you make a wader breathable?
Again, that's one of those things where you partner with somebody that knows how to do something you don't know. And the laminate that you use, your microporous coating laminate, which makes it waterproof, they have different levels. You can say, the common industry thing to say is I want it to be waterproof and I want it to be breathable. And they'll say to what level?
Yeah.
And then it's like a cost thing.
Oh, yeah.
So when we did it, we were like, all right, well, what's and thinking that waterproof at different levels it's a crazy process to do in your head. It's most people will say, well, it's either waterproof or it's not. Well, yeah, that's true. But what you don't think about is with a wader, when you go in the water, and you'll notice as you go deeper and deeper, the more pressure builds.
Yeah.
So that's where really good waterproof separates. It holds pressure.
Yeah.
So we're like, what kind of waterproof can we get that's high pressure tolerant and is still breathable? And it's just a better level.
Yeah.
So that's what you do. You just keep asking why not or why, and what happens if we use one that's as breathable as this is?
Yeah.
Here you go.
There you go.
You're going to have to pay for it. But
yeah. No, I mean, and that's, like you said, you guys set out to improve on the waders that are out there now. And that's kind of the process that you have to go through. And in reality, like you said, you're going to have to pay for it. Inside the boots, insulation in there.
So the boot, basically from where it attaches to the wader all the way through the toe, it's 5 mil neoprene.
Okay.
So that's where you get your comfort. It's lighter and all that. But then we also, in the foot area, around the top of the foot and underneath the foot, we put 1,200 grams of thin-slit insulation.
Okay.
That's one of the things where the market is so keyed on insulation. Does it have insulation in it? What kind of insulation? So you wanted to provide them that insulation that they're accustomed to, but then also add in the neoprene, so it makes it a really warm, really light boot.
And the waders themselves are not insulated.
No, the
correct?
body, there's no
right.
insulation in the body.
Yep.
And, that's a topic of discussion.
I'm a big fan of it. Originally, when people started coming out with the uninsulated, waders, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna freeze. Over the course of the last 8 years, I'm a big fan of non-insulated,
right?
Because I can if I know that it's gonna be cold, I can layer up.
That's right.
And if, like you said, if we're walking long distances, you can control that. The heat inside of there. You can basically be the decision maker on how warm you are in your waders.
I mean, but if somebody sits there and thinks about it, I mean, just think about it just for a minute. Yeah, it's an uninsulated wader, and that concept is kind of odd. They're like, oh, I'm going to freeze. I want insulation. Just think about it for a second. You know what the temperature is going to be tomorrow. what do you need to wear to stay warm? Or what do you need to wear to stay cool? Some of our seasons, it's been so hot throughout the whole year. What do you need to be comfortable in the elements? Just like you're going to work, you know what you got to wear when you're going out in elements. Just let the waiter do its job of keeping you dry.
Yep.
Let's just solely focus on.
So it's almost like you're going out to hunt in a dry field. Yeah. You go out there and you approach it in that manner, and you dress for the cold, however cold you think you might be, and then let the waiter just keep you dry.
That's it. Wear what you need to wear. I mean, and everybody gets different temperatures. I've nearly froze to death before when it was 50 degrees, but it was cold and wet.
Yeah.
You know what you need to do to stay dry or stay warm. Yeah. We'll keep you dry.
That's cool. I know as I get older, back in my heyday, I used to be out there like picking up ice chunks with my bare hands and never get cold, never wear, never have to wear, long underwear, things like that. But as I get older, now I'm much more focused on that.
Oh, man, layering. I see it all the time. I've got, like you have kids. I've got 3 little girls, and they're out there on a snow day with soaking wet gloves, picking it, just never complaining.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was a little too cool in the pool the other day, and I was like, I ain't getting in there. I'll stay out.
Yeah, but we did that just recently. It's by the time it hits 60s, like I'm not getting it back in that pool.
No,
but my kid, I have 2 little girls, and they're just they don't care.
Yeah, just get in there. I'll sit underneath this blanket while y'all swim.
I'll sit underneath the blanket in the backyard while you're swimming. That's how you show you're getting old. A couple more things with the waiter, and then we'll try and get you out of here. The pockets. I noticed you've got inside pockets, which I really like. Yeah. And then you've got the external pockets that are lined, like a flip. What's the liner in there?
So the external pockets have fleece lining. Give you some warm place to put your hand. Mm-hmm. I'm a dog guy, so I always get the ducks. I've always got a wet dog. My hands are always wet.
Yep.
So I like fleece to be able to put them in there and have a dry place to get that water off.
And they're located pretty high.
They're really high, but the pocket is also really deep. So, and that was done on purpose because you're always going to put shells in there. That's just the nature of a waterfowler. If he's got a pocket, he's putting shells in it. And I hated the feeling of when I put my hands in my pocket of touching like that cold brass or a cold shell. Mm-hmm. Y'all don't crucify me. I'm not sensitive, but I mean, it's cold. Let's be honest. No. So the pocket is deep enough for those shells to go down and get out of the way and still have a place for your hands to get warm and dry.
That's cool. That's pretty thoughtful. I didn't really think about that, but that's a good idea.
And then on the inside, there's 2 magnet pockets. For me, that's where I'm keeping my phone. Mm-hmm. It just makes sense in my head, the way I think about it, that if I'm going to pull my phone out and drop it, I want it to drop down into the waiter, not instantly into the water. So that's a phone pocket for me. Another really cool use for that pocket is you can put those hot hand warmers in them. Yeah. And when you put your hands in the outside pocket, that hand warmer is right behind you.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So it keeps your hand warm, your chest warm, and everything warm. So
it's funny how now, manufacturers and not just in waiters like you guys, but in everything, bags, all across the board are now addressing the phone issue. Mm-hmm. Because there was a time not too long ago where people were like, I'm not bringing my phone to go and duck hunting. Now everybody's got a phone duck hunting.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Growing up, I always think about it just because you said phone, it always triggers his thought. My dad, we hunted there at the house, so he kind of hunted every day. But like a couple times a year, he'd take a week-long trip and go to a buddy's place or a different whatever, and he'd leave out on Sunday afternoon and not be back to the next Sunday afternoon. And we didn't hear from him.
Yeah.
There was no calling. There was no checking in. No. There was nothing that. And you fast forward to today, I mean, you ever seen anybody that didn't have their phone right beside them?
No. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something that you have to address. People are going to have their phone. They want their phones.
Yeah, they want it now.
So, you do see more and more, I've got to build a pocket for a specific phone.
Yeah. Absolutely. A specific phone. Yeah. You start getting into specific makes, for different phones and iPhone models. Next thing you know. Belt wise, I think we've pretty much covered the whole thing other than looking at the belt, the waiter belt.
Yeah. The belt, it's cool too. And it's one of the things that you really kind of got to see and touch to understand. But, traditionally belts were kind of like just an afterthought. Mm-hmm. A waiter's got to have a belt. You have a belt, got a belt. And that was it. And it's kind of a slick polyester material, and it would slide so you could adjust them. Problem with that belt is, and everybody's experienced it, you would have to tighten it several times throughout the day to keep it tight. So our belt is made kind of with it's like an elastic bungee in there, and it's ribbed all the way through. So when you do set it, it won't slip. Yeah. It won't come. You don't have to reset it. But what it will do is as you move, if you bend over, if you get in a boat or whatever thing, it'll stretch and then it'll come right back because it's a really heavy duty elastic webbing. So that belt, once you put it on and get it set and get used to it, you're like, oh man, this is really cool. Why did no one think about doing this before?
I'm going to run in these waders.
Yeah. I'm
going to take off running.
I'm going to run around this barn.
Yeah. I've just thought about that again. That's hilarious. I'm going to have to go online and look all that stuff up.
They're funny.
Yeah, that's cool. Anything else about the waders, that you want our audience to know?
Well, I'll tell you this, and we did it, and it's kind of in our model and how we're doing it. We made the statement of we'll stand behind them as long as you stand in them.
Yep.
And what that means is we're doing a limited lifetime warranty on the wader. If it fails or if you have an issue with it, we'll repair it or replace it here in Memphis.
Okay.
We can do that at our shop, and the goal is to try to get it back to you as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Our goal time frame, I kind of think about, I will forever always be a weekend hunter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just how I grew up. It's what I think about, and I try to build it around the weekend hunter. And if a guy goes out on Saturday or Sunday, has an issue, if they can get us that wader Monday, Tuesday of that following week, if they're in Memphis, we can meet them. They can come to the shop.
Memphis is a pretty good place to go because you got FedEx.
Ton to do, yeah.
And you got people can ship it here pretty quick. It's pretty easy to ship stuff.
Even if you're not close by, you can send it here. If we can get it, the goal is to get it back to you before that next weekend, because we have such limited time of the season anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You don't want anybody to miss a day because your product failed.
Yeah.
So get it back, let's get it fixed and get it back to you.
That's cool. And so you guys are going to try and get that turnaround as fast as you possibly can.
I don't want anybody to miss a day of hunting because our product failed them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jeff, this has been fantastic. This has been a great conversation. In the show notes, I'll drop all the pins to all your secret spots on the White River.
Please do.
I know that everyone is probably really cued into that right now.
Please do that.
But no, this has been good. I think, it's awesome having Chêne Gear on board here. Excited to, get in a pair of these and really, see what they're all about and maybe run around a barn or something. It'll be great.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
I'd like to thank my guest, Jeff Jones, for joining us today from Chêne Gear and talking about their new products. I'd also like to thank Chris Isaac, our producer, for putting the show together and getting it out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for joining us in supporting wetlands conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.